There are many crazy cool things happening in and above our skies all of the time and every single day. Some so obscure that chances are high you will see something in this video you've never even heard of. And many of these things can be and are mischaracterized as UFOs and UAPs. There are cameras in every hand that can afford a phone, and yet most cited UAP evidence is still ambiguous, inconclusive, a hoax, or normal human or terrestrial phenomena. I'm Michael, and I'm an experienced photographer, astrophotographer, storm chaser, amateur astronomer, weather and space weather nerd, and all-around dedicated skywatcher. And it's about time I dropped at least a part of my own little take on UFOs and UAPs. Not long before publishing this video, the United States Office of the Director of National Intelligence report on UAPs was released. And in that report, it is suggested that there are perhaps some unexplained phenomena happening in our skies. The reliability of a subset of the reports reviewed suggests that it's worth funding and investigating future UAP encounters with better equipment and preparedness to address potential threats UAPs might pose to national security. What the report does not suggest outright is whether we are being visited by extraterrestrials. Are these really UFOs? Maybe. I can't explain all of them, but let me make a lukewarm take here. These videos, aesthetically, all suck. It's a common theme. The reason I can't identify what's going on in many of these is because the footage, frankly, is horrible. Some are out of focus. Many are in infrared. The context is poor, or it's handheld potato camera phones and 1990s era camcorder footage. This video isn't intended to simply debunk UFO sightings or attempt to point out absurdities of UFO sightings or explore the plausibility of Earth being visited by alien life. But one thing is for certain. We do know that from recent history that novel aerospace technology has been explored by and hidden by world governments. Perhaps most or even all true UAP sightings are just experimental classified technology. I grew up watching Robert Stack and David Duchovny. I wanted to believe too. But 3 decades of experience since have me far more excited about pushing the boundaries of what is real, not what I want to be real. My core area of fascination is with our skies, everything we can see in them and above them, and to that end, I have spent thousands of hours watching and photographing the sky day and night. Yet I've personally never seen something that I couldn't explain. However, I have documented many things that we can explain that few people have seen or even are aware exists. How else should we expect someone to react to something very real they've never heard or seen before, yet appears otherworldly? I can arm you with information that will make you less likely to fall for scams, viral hoaxes, or bad takes, especially on the internet. Skepticism doesn't mean we all have to lack a sense of wonder. Second, I can perhaps introduce you to some crazy cool things that are totally real and maybe new to you. And finally, if you want to go UFO or UAP hunting yourself, you will know what kind of pitfalls you'll have to navigate to properly prove your finds. There are things I often see posted to social media, photographed poorly, taken out of context, and paired with a compelling story. Whether these are intentionally meant to deceive or truly innocent WTF moments, I can help. And you yourself can go capture and see these for yourself and replicate the result just by knowing when and how to look. Most of the content you are about to see are things I've captured myself. In the description below are links to deeper dive videos I've already made into most of these. And each of the things that I'm going to show you, I've also seen either posted to social media asking for explanation, were misidentified, or have generated 911 calls or UFO reports in the past. I won't, however, be covering hoaxes done in CGI. That's out of my scope, honestly. The sky is the limit on what kind of clever stuff you can make in Blender these days, though I know exactly which channel you should go to for those types of hoaxes. Let's begin with things Earth's atmosphere itself is capable of. Closer to the polar extremes of our planet are the northern and southern lights. Most people who live in these sparsely populated regions wouldn't likely mistake Aurora for something else. But sometimes, solar activity can bring these lights far closer to lower latitudes, even subtropical regions where major metropolitan centers are. And when these lights march into those areas, aurora don't quite look the same as they do in the Arctic, or as portrayed in movies. Whenever these major events happen, 911 centers get flooded with phone calls from people worried about an invasion, or bombs, or wildfires. See my Aurora playlist for more information about these events. Aurora can be bright white, deep green, or blood red. Pillars, pulses, something like a vortex overhead, and fast-moving swirls. Northern lights far from the poles are harmless, but do indicate strong solar influences that in some extreme cases could cause power outages and radio communication problems. For the most part, it means grab a good camera and take some good photos. A near cousin to northern lights is Airglow, and this is visible from really anywhere on the planet at night, taking on a green and pink hue and normally only seen in long exposure photography. Brightness varies quite a bit from night to night. The very outer edge of the Earth's atmosphere, at around 120 kilometers above ground, is tortured with radiation from sunlight and deep space. This radiation ionizes or chemically combines the oxygen and nitrogen at this altitude. Light is produced in the form of faint colors similar to aurora. Also closer to the polar regions are something called Noctilucent or night shining clouds. These are ice crystals forming in the highest reaches of the atmosphere in the summer months. Typically, these are seen from northern Europe and the northern half of North America. For a few hours after sunset and before sunrise, sunlight over the horizon can catch these clouds aglow, causing faint blue swirls to be visible over the northern horizon from the northern hemisphere. In Earth's middle latitudes, we can have crazy cloud structure like mammatus and asperatus, or storms that can twist themselves in crazy shapes resembling alien spacecraft. Hoaxers might steal, composite, and enhance these images. But I think the real thing is better. Check out my Structure Man video for dozens of examples I captured in 2020 alone. This is not a real photo. These are clouds twisted up in Photoshop and made to look like Cthulhu. In fact, that's not even Oklahoma. Tornadoes also can't suck up rainbows. Instead, they will happily coexist. Lightning, of course, is something nearly everyone on Earth is familiar with. But high above storms is something quite unfamiliar to most of the world. Transient luminous events, or sprites. Most sprites, just one kind of TLE, can be weak and nearly invisible to the naked eye. But more powerful TLEs can actually be shocking to see in person for the first time. Holy shit! Dude, you should have seen it on the camera. Dude, it was wow. Intense as hell.
Woo! That's gonna be a hell of a shot.
Sprites happen quite literally in the blink of an eye. They are visible if you are in just the right place at night, at the right distance from a thunderstorm complex, well away from city lights or clouds, trees, or buildings to block your view of the horizon. We've only known about them for a few decades, and cameras have only recently gotten good enough for consumers to capture them in detail. In the past, people who did see them were often reluctant to report them, fearing in part that these would immediately be dismissed as yet another unverifiable UFO sighting. Check out this Sprite video, or subscribe for my next one coming soon. Check out Paul's channel for hundreds more examples of sprites and other TLEs. In this case, it's an example of a UFO or UAP becoming confirmed as a real natural phenomenon, vindicating those who claimed they existed for more than a century. Clouds consist of water vapor or ice crystals, and of course, they can result in falling snow, rain, and hail. Clouds and precipitation have unique ways of interacting with light under the right conditions. Rainbows are certainly well known all over the world, but much rarer things can happen too, like halos, sundogs, parhelix circles, and circumzenith arcs. Drifting or light snow and extreme cold can result in complex multi-phenomenon displays. Check out my Halos and Vortex video for more, or visit Les Cowley's website for countless real-world examples and theoretical scenarios. Sundogs especially get mischaracterized as UFOs or generate buzz on social media. Hail cores inside large thunderstorms can turn storm clouds green. Smoke and volcanic ash can also tint skies and warp visibility. See, for example, my volcanic sunsets video. Hopefully I'm giving you the proper sense now that I spend an awful lot of time looking up and talking about it. The takeaway here is that weather can be responsible for far more than you might think, and perhaps is coincident with a subset of past UAP sightings by those unfamiliar with all the different moods and very real but dramatic shapes our atmosphere is capable of producing. Not every UAP witness is weather savvy. It certainly wouldn't hurt to explore all the possible ways weather can misdirect an observer. In recent years, satellite launches from California's Vandenberg Air Force Base into sun-synchronous orbits have generated countless calls to law enforcement and concerned tweets from the LA area. Because these sorts of launches happen near dusk or dawn, the plumes from rocket exhaust high in the atmosphere can catch sunlight in an otherwise blackened sky. And that leads me into my next segment, objects in orbit or at the edge of space and the unique situations caused by Earth's shadow. Next time you watch a sunset, turn around and look the other way. You'll see something called the Belt of Venus, a band of orange, pink, and purple above the horizon. Below this is Earth's shadow. Above is the atmosphere still scattering direct sunlight. In between is the light from the reddened sun as sunlight passes through the most atmosphere. As your spot on Earth continues to turn away from the sun, this band climbs higher into the sky and eventually darkness sets in. However, Earth's shadow is still there, spreading out into the night sky. The sun no longer illuminating any of the air above you, but you can still find Earth's shadow at night if you look carefully. There are thousands of satellites in low Earth orbit, and many are just high enough to be still bathed in sunlight as they pass overhead just after dark. Satellites, for the most part, do not produce any of their own light. Seeing them means they are reflecting sunlight back to Earth. Occasionally, their shape and materials might really reflect that sunlight, causing them to suddenly surge in brightness or even just flash instantaneously. To find Earth's shadow, just follow a few satellites across the sky. Eventually, you will see one disappear into Earth's shadow. Recently, SpaceX's Starlink network has been catching a lot of attention because just after they are launched in groups of 60, they create a train across the sky, but they too disappear into Earth's shadow. Check out my Starlink versus astrophotography video for more about that. When Starlink was first being launched, it too was mistaken for UFOs or UAPs, as nothing else like it had been seen before. But many other satellites are launched in groups like this, or can be seen in pairs or groups as part of their normal operation. The brightest artificial satellite is the ISS. It's extremely bright, often mistaken as a UAP, and can occasionally be seen getting chased down by other manned or unmanned spacecraft like Cygnus or Dragon. Handheld nighttime video of the ISS is responsible for a handful of "what the heck is this" videos posted to social media. Just a quick segue into nighttime photography. Unlike daytime photography, which is just catching instantaneous moments in time, nighttime and astrophotography almost always require long exposure times. The shutter is held open and light enters the camera's lens, hits the sensor, and is collected over several seconds or minutes. Check out some of my astrophotography videos for techniques and suggested equipment to get you started. Anything that happens during that time, motion, lightning, flashes of light, are all recorded onto a single image. Stars, planes, and satellites will trail across your final image. The Sony A7S series and other very low light sensitive cameras can capture everything I've talked about so far in real-time video, and even at high frame rates. Video makes things look more or less how they appear in real life, while long exposures will have moving lights painted and streaked onto the sensor. Unless those are processed out through stacking. Suppose thousands of fireflies enter your camera's field of view. Lightning bugs glow green and will leave green streaks in long exposures, oftentimes out of focus too. And yes, I've seen the humble lightning bug posted to social media as a potential UAP over the years. I could go on for hours of discussion on all the things that can ruin a photograph, but suffice it to say, don't do handheld video or photos at night. Always use a tripod. If you can't do that, it's probably not even worth trying. But that also explains in part why, in spite of almost everyone having a camera in their pocket at all times, it isn't generally resulting in high quality, indisputable UFO or UAP videos. It's just too hard to do at night, and zoom on cell phone cameras is generally terrible, day or night. It's important that you know how cameras work, their limitations, and everything that can go wrong. And I don't mean you've held a fancy camera once and know some terms. If you want to get good video of the next big UFO incident, really get to know the device you're working with first, even if that's just the cell phone in your pocket. Okay, so back to satellites. Two types that I want to point out are iridium flares and the geodesic-shaped satellites. Some satellites, like the old Iridium network, would produce extremely bright glints of sunlight off their large solar panels, changing in brightness significantly and suddenly. Seeing one and not knowing what this is would probably make someone unfamiliar with them automatically assume some sort of UAP. Satellites have solar panels of varying size, and they do change in brightness. This means that, just by chance, you might catch a bright flash, like a star instantly winking in and out of existence. Geodesic satellites are covered in flat panels all over a near spherical shape, while out-of-control satellites and spent upper rocket stages may tumble across their orbit. In either case, they can produce rapid changes and pulses in brightness, looking much like this either in long-exposure photographs or in time-lapse video. Most people have or will see a shooting star sometime in their lifetime, but that's just the most common form of something that can get pretty crazy. Some meteors are fireballs that can flash like lightning. Some are Earth grazers that can traverse almost the entire night sky at speeds that boggle the mind compared to anything else you've ever seen. On video, these will mostly be fast-moving points of light. In long exposures, streaks that vary in color from orange to white to green or purple, and noticeably change in brightness. See this video for hundreds of examples from a single weekend. The brightest of meteors can leave smoke trails. Meteors are just bits of rock, dust, or metal. The composition, along with that meteor's speed and size, dictates what colors are produced, how long the meteor lasts, and how much material gets left behind. Iron and/or magnesium in this meteor caused it to leave a bright yellow-green streak over an enormous portion of the sky. While smoke can be visible in photographs and linger for minutes or even an hour or more after the parent meteor streaks through the sky. Ionization of these smoke particles high in the atmosphere caused this dust to glow slightly, while also scattering faint amounts of light pollution from the ground or starlight from above. And by the way, those night shining clouds, this is months and years worth of that lingering meteor smoke with ice crystals forming on them. Ice and water vapor need something to condense to in order to form clouds. Meteor smoke does the job high in the upper atmosphere. Of course, the most extreme meteors, the size of a suitcase on up to a school bus, will produce incredible displays day or night. This is rare and most often captured by security cameras and dash cams. And while neither small bits of dust nor satellites will make a sound, these large meteors, or even re-entering spacecraft, might make it far enough into the atmosphere to produce a sonic boom or shockwave. Perhaps the most common description of a UFO sighting I can remember sounds like this. I saw a bright light moving across the sky or hovering almost motionless, and then it disappeared and streaked off into the night sky at breakneck speed. But if I change that to, I saw a bright satellite dip below Earth's shadow, and then there was a bright Earth-grazing meteor in the area seconds later, that doesn't sound like an interesting basis for a mystery TV show. At least it's a little more sophisticated of an explanation than weather balloons or swamp gas, I guess. A few years ago, I stumbled along someone's personal blog on the internet showing drifting satellites, meteors, and even commercial airplanes at night, all done by his or herself using the long exposure photograph method, touting all of them as examples of alien spacecraft. Don't be that person, and don't fall for that either. Planes have red and green blinking port and starboard lights, as well as white marker lights, and on approach, very bright landing lights. You can recognize the pattern they leave behind in photographs, typically 3 bands of continuous light, with periodic red and green lights blinking at intervals as it streaks by. Planes look very different in long exposures than they do in person. Remember my point about painting light across your camera sensor. Our solar system's planets themselves have been a source of confusion, police reports, and more. The vast majority of people now live in heavily light-polluted cities and are not used to seeing planets or stars on a regular basis. Regardless, Venus specifically is often mistaken, even by well-trained commercial pilots, as being, for example, an incoming aircraft with its landing lights on. Venus makes an appearance in the evening sky and then the morning sky every year and a half. At its closest approach to Earth, it's exceptionally bright. It's easy to get used to there being nothing terribly interesting in the twilight sky for 18 months, and then suddenly there's this crazy bright point of light over the horizon almost no one is expecting to see. There definitely is a reason why some UFO reports get dismissed as Venus.
Swamp gas from a weather balloon was trapped in a thermal pocket and refracted the light from Venus.
Even if that feels like some sort of Men in Black trope. Because sometimes it really is Venus. Venus will appear like this again at the end of 2021 and again in the summer of 2023. Not even high-level politicians are immune to misidentifying Venus as a UFO. And remember what I meant about using a tripod for taking photos and videos at night. A horribly zoomed in, out of focus, handheld smartphone image of a planet or a bright star or other point of light is probably one of the most common things I see posted to social media by UFO hypesters and hoaxers, sometimes paired with a great story. My rule of thumb is, if the story is more compelling than the image or video with it, disregard, or maybe share this video with them. The U.S. Intelligence Office UFO report itself laments that current military camera technology, training, and other factors are the main reason UFOs and UAPs cannot be well identified, confirmed, or attributed to some other natural phenomenon or piece of human technology. Misidentifying objects that could just be blurry infrared video of a foil party balloon from 3 miles away is a difficult problem for the military and government intelligence. Citizens aren't going to prove anything with badly photographed images either. So how about some quick examples of everyday things cameras do that people regularly misidentify? Like, for example, that time I saw an image on Facebook of the sun through a smudged smartphone lens, described by the photographer as an image of a sun laser beam. If nothing else, make sure the lens is clean. If there's dirt on the camera's sensor, this might cause something called a dark mote. Sealed up smartphones and GoPros don't suffer this problem. It's a unique problem to SLR or DSLR cameras. When the lens is detached, the sensor gets exposed to dust. And boy, does this happen to me a lot. Dark motes mean light is being absorbed by a tiny speck of something very close to the camera sensor. Normally these are stationary in video, but if you took some handheld video of, say, a tornado touching down in West Kansas, then use image stabilization software, that dark mote will appear to rapidly dance around the screen, and some people might think you've captured some tic-tac shaped alien hovercraft investigating your tornado. Image and compression artifacts, sensor noise and amp glow, pixel blooming and damaged video files, or ghosted images on magnetic tape and more. The point is, it's a good idea to truly understand how modern and even past camera technology really works before diving in and attempting to make new discoveries or confirm the presence of a true UFO or UAP. And on the flip side, don't fall for other people making innocent or in some cases, nefarious attempts to fool you.
No one uses the word nefarious. Like, no one.
And now for the lightning round. Zodiacal light, visible in complete darkness on the east and west horizon after dark and before dawn. It's interplanetary dust between Earth and the sun, not a tractor beam. The Milky Way core. Yes, it really can be spectacular from a dark location. The Andromeda Galaxy. Naked eye visible object, not a distant flying saucer. Bright comets, probably not being followed by aliens. Put the black Nikes away. Dim comets, they glow like green spheres. And don't even get me started about lens flares. A slightly out of focus bright star in bad seeing conditions. It'll flash every color in the rainbow and dance erratically. It's atmospheric interference, not a coded message from the mothership. Geostationary satellites, star-tracked, narrow-field images near the celestial equator may be polluted by these. Lenticular clouds, cloud iridescence, and light pillars. Though be careful, there's a lot of fakes. And finally, have you ever seen a flock of geese flying in a V formation, or a small drifting cloud of pelicans? Hopefully no one would mistake that for an alien invasion. But what about 250,000 Canadian geese migrating north simultaneously? Hopefully I've inspired you to explore further and see some of the craziest, but real, things visible in the sky. Comment below if you saw something in this video you've never heard of before or want to know more about. We live on a pretty nifty planet. And if you stick around and subscribe to this channel, there's so much more I'll have to share with you. And until the next one, I'll see you out there.